Hey everybody, welcome to a new episode of Walk in Faith. I'm excited to be sitting down with Temeko Richardson, who's actually in New York, which I didn't realize that we're sort of neighbors. But Temeko is a seasoned executive producer, director, and writer, and she's known for her inspirational films. And her latest film, At the Cross, delves into controversial topics often overlooked in traditional church settings and resonates with the youth and contemporary culture. So, Temeko, thank you so much for sitting down with me. Honestly, it's really a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on your podcast. It's awesome.
Oh, so tell me now, like we mentioned, your resume is impressive. You won, or was it 6 awards for your latest film, At the Cross? Or tell me about that, and tell me about the film, why, you got involved in production, and also what inspired you to create this new film, At the Cross.
All right. So the film actually at the cross is now up to 8 awards. So it was six. So
Wow.
in the last, I guess, month, it
Who's
won.
counting, right? Who's counting?
Well, it got a couple more awards. So that particular film is based on a journey of a bishop who is a pastor, and he's the pastor of an urban interracial church. And what he is doing is he is finding his way through a journey of where he has to um, have a successor because he's getting older. And he also is dealing with a lot of the realities that the people of the church are now dealing with in different generations, from the youth, things that cover the LGBTQ community, and as well as having leadership with females in at the top hierarchy. So he's dealing with all of those types of things. And what made me get into that is my grandparents, my maternal grandparents, I should say, they are both preachers and pastors. So as I stayed with them while my parents were getting divorced, so you kind of know the nuances of everything related around the church. And you also know a whole lot of pastors' stories behind the scenes that people wouldn't know. So it's actually based on a real story. So that makes it a lot easier. So you didn't have to kind of make things up because a lot of things are true. So, and in terms of wanting to make the story, I think the key of making the story is basically not only to inspire church leaders, but also inspire people who are churchgoers or the unchurched in terms of helping them understand what the church is all about, right? So we know from history that people in the church can be very judgmental.
Mm-hmm.
So that actually sways people from coming to church or at least remaining in church. And then we also have those issues of individuals in the church that don't reach out to others beyond the church walls. And we also have these situations of having leaders in church that don't really have great succession plans and kind of kills the church at the end. And of course, we also have the issues of the youth, right? Things that you and I didn't go through when we were younger. And social media has played a bigger part in all of the things that the youth are going through right now. And they need a safe haven and a space in order to heal and from those issues. And of course, anybody that is marginalized in different communities, they can't come to church or they don't feel welcome because of who they are, judgments in the church. So the film was done in order to have those uncomfortable conversations and hopefully help leaders in the church as well as people that are afraid to go to church and are unchurched and are in church all be better people.
Mm.
So
Wow. You said, like, as you're speaking, I'm like, two of the things you mentioned, I was thinking and reflecting on today and yesterday. And one thing, I mean, you mentioned so many things. Ooh, let me just stop. You mentioned so many things, and you and I could definitely have a long conversation about. One is when you're around pastors or priests or close within, the church walls, you do see and experience certain things. And for me, at first, it didn't shake or rattle my faith, but it made me question certain things, and being that close to the church or working within the church and the way people sort of view the church versus what you have experienced. But you said a lot of important things. One is the fact that there are a lot of pastors or priests or clergy that they don't always necessarily go outside the walls, their comfort zone. They think they think in zip codes, like this is sort of my congregation or my parish, and they are very comfortable within those walls, and they don't always go outside the walls to welcome and bring people in. And I was reading just recently, it was yesterday actually, about how priests, or pastors, how they would used to go out and how they were portrayed, especially within society. It's very different how they're portrayed now. And in order to bring in the youth or bring in people into the church, you need to be more open and welcoming, and you need to go beyond the church walls. And the succession plan, I see that all the time. It's like, this is my church, this is my parish, my congregation. They're not thinking forward, thinking about the future, because, if there's not a succession plan or there isn't something set up, what happens? What's the future? And if we don't bring in the youth, to your point, what is the future? I visited last week, like I said, Maryknoll. They had over 1,000, priests and missionaries at a time. Now they have less than 200, and those 200 are mostly elderly. Like there's no future. So when I said to them, "What's the future?" They don't know, and it's not necessarily their fault. But you see this across the board. I mean, it doesn't matter what denomination. I mean, there is something going on behind the scenes, the work of the enemy, that there is a complete sort of, there's just this destruction within the church. I don't know what is. I mean, I can't imagine you haven't seen that or noticed that there is I mean, there's a small percentage of people that identify with the church or will even say that they are religious or believe in God. Like, there's such a decrease, and these topics you're talking about are really important, especially now.
Yeah, well, I think a couple things to that. One is people are turned off with uh the I'll call it the evangelical preaching that identifies and makes people feel uncomfortable with their life or other people that they know life. It's turned more into like political warfare using the Bible. So that completely turns people off from the church and anything related to religion. So I think that's one problem. The second problem, as I indicated before, is that the judgment. People in the church tend to do a lot of judgment. Um, and it's really not fair, because at the end of the day, it's like we all have fallen short of the glory of God, right? So we've all have sinned. And unless we start with a process of like learning to sin less, is I guess what the what was talked or what was said in the movie. We got to love people, but we have to love them into a correction, right? So just like a parent loves their child, but they don't love it when they do something wrong, right? So they're going to correct them as they grow older to help them improve and not do those things wrong again. It's the same process, right? And inside the church, I think another part that we do is that we have what we have done, we have shunned people based on their sins. Like, there's a hierarchy of sins. Like, nowhere in the Bible is there a depiction of your sin is
Mhm.
worse than this one, and this is going to get you to purgatory quicker. So those types of things, I think that we're not aware of when we have that type of judgment. And then I think also from a perspective of beholding people to their sins. So if a person has a child out of wedlock, they're not married, do we hold that against them for the whole time the child is like, growing up, and we, have our nose stuck up on those individuals because of that? Um, and we hold people to those sins, right? Just like even with pastors, right? So pastors that have issues, whatever those issues are, they're still human, but people still hold those sins to them. So I think from an unforgiveness and judgmental part, that has shunned people away. The political use of the Bible, that shunned people away. And I think also the fact that you indicated that the ministers and the leaders are not in the community. One of the things that our pastor used to do at Allen AME, the Reverend Floyd Flake, he used to, I mean, he goes to the local barbershops, right? So he'd get the barbershop, he'd get his haircut at the barbershop. He'd know and he'd have a pulse on what's going on in the community. He'd talk to them. People, of course, respected him. As soon as he walked in the door, they're all cussing stopped, that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, those type of people, they would tell people, hey, Reverend Flake, he comes to our barbershop, people would go to the church, right? So they would know people and other people that would go to the church. So it was more of a community and reaching out. And then I think also community events. The church has fallen short on understanding that they need to do things for the meek, the poor, the widows, people in the community, and they've fallen short on like community events to bring people out, like outdoor events. Like even with the pandemic, one of the things that we did is that we had service outside. So we set up like all these tents and like humongous space outside for the community. So people saw that there was actually an actual service going on, and they actually came over. And then they became members of the church eventually, right? So I think there's a lot of things that you can do, even like helping people out with school outreach, giveaways, and of course, feeding the hungry. So I those all things all fall into what the church is supposed to be about in order to reach people beyond the walls. And I think churches kind of lost their way with that.
I agree. And I think maybe, like you said too, COVID, I think, has sort of exasperated that, where they really do think within their small little community. And then because I seen too, when I talk to priests and pastors, they're very comfortable in their zip code. And if you take them out of that comfort zone, they get a little bit standoffish. They're a little bit more insecure. But within those walls and within that area, having parishioners constantly, talk to them or pray for me. And after a while, we'll give them, maybe it's a bun cake or whatever they baked for them on Sunday. I could see how that could really take an effect. And when they're asked to step out of that comfort zone or out of their zip code, I see there's a change. One thing I mentioned to you too, I've interviewed thousands and thousands of people, but not a lot of female directors or producers. And it's interesting because when I first came across your films, I was like, wow, I wasn't really familiar with your projects. Have you experienced that? I know you mentioned you experienced within the church, and I've experienced within the church the hierarchy, but within the faith-based community, have you experienced where you feel, or maybe you've noticed that there aren't a lot of female directors currently?
I can't say I have because I usually don't pay attention to those things. So I'm on the other side of the I'll call it the mission, in terms of I just do what I do. I don't care about who looks like me and all of the acceptance. I do it for a purpose, and the purpose is to inspire. So yeah, I honestly wouldn't even know. But at the end of the day, I think it's great for people to tell their stories, and if those stories are based on individuals coming from different walks of life, I think it's a good thing for people to tell their story.
So what do you hope to accomplish with some of the films? I know you mentioned at the cross, but about some of your other films and projects you've worked on, what is sort of your ultimate goal?
Well, the ultimate goal is to tell the inspiring stories to help people in whatever they're going through in life. So whether it's corporate challenges, it's mental well-being, which is the film that's out now. Well, through the film festival, is about mental well-being and mental health for men, and that's called I am him. So basically using all of those as a platform to help people through whatever their challenges are, because I hope that they always get a message that they can use to keep forward through adversity, and understand that Christ, even though you can't trace him, he's still there.
So what are you currently working on? Do you have another film in the work that you could share with us?
Sure. There's a short film that's out in the film festivals, right, film festival circle right now, called I Am Him, and that tracks the journey of two friends, and that whole concept of, especially males, where they go through things in life, but they always say I am okay, right? They never identify what's wrong with them as it relates to relationships, financial things that they have to go through in their career, all of that in terms of challenges. And so they kind of are meeting each other, pretending that they're okay, and then they find out neither one of them are okay. And one actually uh, basically just shows up when he was on the brink of suicide. And then they have a spiritual leader who kind of guides them along the way with some advice. And so that's the gist of that one. And I'm turning that one into a series. So that will actually be a series after it leaves the film festival.
Wow. Congratulations. I mean, you have a lot going on. I know, between the films and your other businesses and stuff like that and the church. I mean, you have a lot. Really, it's amazing to meet someone and, that's accomplished so much and to hear 8 awards for your latest film. I mean, I know we do films and TV shows and documentaries. There's a lot of work that goes into it, especially when you're creating films for the kingdom to glorify God. I always make the same joke. Like if I was to do a horror film, it'd be simple, right? Or a film that glorifies things that go against what we believe, it's a lot easier. But when you're trying to create a faith-based film, documentary, something that glorifies the kingdom and brings people to Christ, or even inspirational, it is really hard. It's very challenging. So I commend you for that.
Yeah, I think the challenge also is because we live in a society in the US, I'll say specifically that negativity gets more clicks, gets more followers, people are more interested in it, tearing people down, people love it for some reason. So when you try to do something that's inspirational, it's always challenging.
I agree. Well, thank you so much. Now, how can people find out more about your films and your projects? Can you share your website?
Sure. The website is rlcgprod.com. It has all the information about the past films, current films, upcoming series and films and documentaries. It also includes a walkthrough of all the trailers of all of the films, so you can see them there. And then you can follow us on Instagram at the same handle, rlcgprod, and the same thing for Facebook.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Walk in Faith. Always remember you have the ability to inspire and evangelize through words and actions. God bless you. And watch her latest film, At the Cross. Thank you so much, Temeko.
Thank you.